I'm at 75%, so if
Hi,
there's
Ellie.
something,
Hi there.
if there's something you want to look at, let me know. 'Cause I got the whole packet here and as much
Oh.
budget as I can find.
Yeah. Let's see what I got here.
All right, I'd like to ask Pastor Lee Otto to come up from New Life Church to give the invocation.
Good evening. If you would please stand with me. Heavenly Father, we gather here today in the spirit of unity and service for the city of Watertown. We thank you for the blessings of community and safety and shared purpose that bind us together. We lift up in prayer our police chief and all the dedicated officers who serve and protect our city. Grant them strength and wisdom and safety as they stand on the front lines, upholding justice and ensuring peace for our residents. May your protection surround them in every call and every moment of duty. We also pray for our brave firefighters and first responders who rush into danger to save lives and property. Bless them with courage, quick thinking, and resilience. Keep them safe from harm and equip them to continue their vital work with unwavering commitment. We pray as well for the superintendent and the school leaders, teachers, and staff who shape the minds and futures of our youth. Grant them wisdom, patience, and inspiration to foster learning, growth, and character in every student. May they be supported in their efforts to create safe and nurturing environments for education. We ask your blessings upon the residents of Watertown and the businesses within our city. May they thrive in prosperity, health, and harmony, contributing their talents and energies to grow and strengthen this great community for generations to come. Finally, we ask for your guidance upon Mayor Stocks, our city leaders, and all representatives gathered here. Bestow upon them clarity of vision, integrity in decision-making, and a heart for the people they serve. May their deliberations be fruitful, their actions just, and their leadership inspire hope and progress for Watertown. Father, we pray for your divine protection over the entire city of Watertown, shielding it from harm, natural disasters, and any threats, that our community may remain safe, secure, and resilient. As we begin this city council meeting, help us all to work together with respect, compassion, and dedication to the common good. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'll call today's Common Council meeting on November 18th to order. It's 7:03. Megan?
Davis? Here. Lampy?
Here.
Berg?
Here.
Bartz? Here. Blanky?
Here.
Smith? Here. Arnett?
Here.
Wetzel?
Here.
Moldenhauer?
Okay, can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
You there, Myron?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Still 7:03. Okay, first on the agenda, we have the minutes of the council meeting held on November 4th.
I'll move for approval of those minutes, Mayor Stocks.
Okay, a motion by Berg. Second by Smith. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Next, we have comments and suggestions from citizens present. If you please state your name and address, you have up to 3 minutes. If you're saying kind of same thing as someone else, you can just kind of add to that a little bit. Don't have to go the full 3 minutes if you don't need to. No comments, okay. Okay, next I will then open the public hearing for the 2026 proposed budget. Anybody wishing to speak in the public hearing may do so now. Mr. Smith?
Yes, I would defer
my comments to anybody that wishes to speak from the public, but it just appeared was nobody that was going to be speaking.
Okay, I guess
Okay.
nobody from the public.
Okay, well, I have only one motion to make, and it has several components, so I have, I'll specify what categories will be affected by the motion, and I can give the account numbers, which will be helpful, I'm hopeful, to our finance director. But
I'm sorry, are we on 6 or 9 right now?
we are part of the 6 public hearing.
Okay, so these are motions that we could take up in 9?
No, my motion is now during the public hearing, which is consistent with the memo that you received from our city attorney that suggested that the motions from our council can be made during the course of that public hearing, which is what I'm intending to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. My motion is to reduce the account 01551146, which is the general fund, the city contribution to the library, by $100,000 to increase account 01543160, also in the general fund, the street capital outlay by $100, and to reduce account 5581169, the debt fund, annual streets, by $100,000.
Sorry, clarification, was that second number, you said $100, did you mean $100?
100,000. Each of the 3 components is the same 100,000, reducing the library contribution by 100,000, increasing the amount for streets capital outlay in the general fund, and then reducing by 100,000 the borrowing, the debt fund, by $100,000. If we get a second and we can get that for discussion, I'll make the,
Motion for all 3?
it's a single motion.
Single
just
motion
3
for all 3.
components.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay. A second by Moldenhauer. Any
Yes.
discussion?
Okay, the effect of those 3 components taken together will be to reduce the city contribution in the general fund to the library by $100,000. There will be no net change in the allocation for streets. It's just a different location for the money that has already been allocated and puts it into different funds. And there will be no change to the overall effect of the motion on the general fund, the operational fund. And it does reduce our city debt by $100,000.
Mr. Lampe.
I'd move to amend the motion to have the reduction from our contingency fund if we have the funds. Mark, how much money do we have in that right now?
For next year.
226,000.
which started at 100,000. So that's my motion. I'd like to reduce that from 226 down to 126, which would still be larger than what we started with.
Ms. Davis.
I'm not following. Could you explain how that's an amendment to Mr. Smith?
Sure. I believe there was a reduction to, so the library contribution, we're looking to cut them $40,000 this year already.
Correct.
I believe the motion was to increase the cut from $40,000 by another $100,000. So cut $140,000 from the library in a single year. So what I'm asking for instead is, instead of taking that from 0155 1146, which would be a bad idea, and pulling that out of the contingency fund, which we have put over $100,000 of basically expenses or things that we could save for later. There's plenty of room in that fund.
We need a second for Mr. Lampy.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, second by Bartz.
Mr. Stocks? Open for comment then on the amendment, correct? So just to clarify the purpose behind the $200,000 or so in the contingency fund. The reason that that is in there, you could kind of almost think of it as a placeholder. The way expenditure restraint works is that you're limited to a percentage from one year to the next. And so our original thought was to reduce that entirely, and but in doing so, that's actually going to be a disservice for us into the future. So it was strategic to put the $200,000 there. Our hope is, in our record year after year, is that that won't be touched very much, and that would mean then that we wouldn't need to draw very much from our fund balance. As you can see, our fund balance is roughly, the budgeted roughly is at 1.1 roughly. And the goal then is to not spend this contingency fund so that at the end of the year, we actually don't have to go into our fund balance as much as we currently have budgeted. So it's a strategic move to have that amount of money in the contingency fund.
Let's stick with a motion by Lampy first. I think we'll have to vote on that one first.
I believe Alder Smith has a comment.
I didn't mean to vote this second. I just meant to concentrate on that one. So I meant Mr. Lampy. Thank you. Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Just speaking on the amendment, the intent is not only to cut the contribution by the city to the library operating budget, but to use that cut for purposes of diminishing our borrowing. Under the transfer amendment, we're simply talking about, instead of reducing the library account, we're simply talking about tapping into the contingent account. What I'm looking to do is to try to save the taxpayers the money to maintain our favorable position under expenditure restraint by moving capital items into the general budget and by reducing the borrowing that then will no longer be 100,000 of the borrowing, which will no longer be necessary because we have made a cut, reduced in the process an additional 100,000 from the capital account, and now will not have to borrow 100,000. There's a marked difference. One is a transfer, the amendment, and what my ultimate goal is, and hopefully if we defeat this amendment, we can vote straight up on the issue of cutting $100,000 that will ultimately save the taxpayers $100,000.
Mr. Lampy.
I kind of understand the intent. but you're removing money essentially from an operating budget, where if your complaint with the budget is that we moved too many things out of Fund 1 into Fund 5, and now we're essentially unnecessarily counting a number of items that we had previously budgeted as Fund 1 items as Fund 5 items. I think the smarter thing to do would be actually to go back and reverse some of the transfers that we made to Fund 1 under Fund 5 and see if we can get that $100,000 back that way. There's a number of items that I think are highlighted within Fund 5 that are listed as transfers from Fund 1. I think we may want to take a moment, add those up, and see what those look like if we move those back to Fund 1, if that's the objection or if that's the intent of this, this motion.
Finance already went through the budget. Knocking off $50 and looking at it again probably isn't the right thing to do right now. We already went through this.
We
We
did.
went through this budget already. Ms. Davis?
Neither Mr. Smith's motion or Mr. Lampe's motion will impact the tax levies for this year. The debt levy for this year is based on borrowing that took place previously. So these motions will not impact the levy for this year.
Mr. Smith?
The whole point of trying to work with the library board in the area of their endowment account, requesting that they fund a significant component of debt service, which was approximately $200,000, were done for the purpose of, first, saving the taxpayers' money immediately. That money would have been used for a debt levy that is due and payable this year. It also was from an account for which almost $1 million presently exists, 919,000 or whatever it is. So there was a substantial amount of money in that endowment account. It would have been immediately beneficial and would have been tremendously favorable, would have reduced immediately the mill rate increase from the present required mill rate increase of 3.24% down to 2.78%, an immediate benefit. The interesting thing is, and one of the frustrating things as well, as during the course of the library board meeting, there were constant references to why the endowment account could not be used for debt service, which is underwriting a building project, because of limitations within the endowment fund more broadly. In the Finance Committee, over a month ago, I asked for a breakout of every component that makes up this endowment account. I am still waiting to receive that. It's awfully hard to try to intelligently address an issue that's being raised against something when you've asked for the capacity to understand it and it's being withheld. That's point number one. Point number two, within that endowment account was a present year donation of almost $400,000. At an earlier Finance Committee meeting, the library director indicated that the expectation was that that gift would have been less than 25% of the huge amount that was received. At that point in time, there was no claim that that giving was restricted. So what I'm saying is, the basis for denying use of the endowment account from the library board perspective is that it falls into a category that has at no point in time ever been documented. There is no reason on earth why an account that is as important and as much in consideration as that was cannot over 1 month be made transparent and plain to the members of the council that have to make decisions. The whole purpose of trying to respect the library's management of their accounts is that that endowment account had over $900,000 of usable money, which we will continue to say usable money until it has been documented that it is not usable. I certainly would love to have an accurate accounting of it. On the other hand, the other fund balance, which taken together come to over $1.3 million, is $470-some thousand and has nothing whatsoever to do except the fact that it is available for any operational purpose. Kind of the same kind of money that the city budget has taken $1.1 million to infuse into our budget to try to keep the financial posture of the city reasonably fair toward the taxpayers and towards the issues of financial responsibility across the board. Now, this motion, the reduction of $100,000 of the city subsidy being modified for the library's use, gives them the same opportunity that the Finance Committee has given to every other entity that has been involved with cuts this year. We have done everything reasonably possible to address a fair budget to all of the departments across the board. All of the departments are experiencing cuts. All of the departments experiencing tight financial circumstances, and the taxpayers of the community are facing difficult financial times. I think we've done a good job trying to keep the tax increase reasonably within the bounds of inflation. This motion will allow us to move the actual mill rate increase to an amount almost identical to the documented rate of inflation, which is the whole point of this, to try to infuse more consideration for the taxpayers in this broader budget than is the case with this right now. And so my view towards the library, who would be addressing a $100,000 reduction in subsidy, is to either implement efficiencies within the operation of their library services, or use some portion of that almost $500,000 operational fund balance. That's all because they refused to consider what would have been a much more favorable response and use from the fund balance that was more than twice as large as the one that they're going to be able to use in this instance.
Mayor Stocks?
Yes, Mr. Berg.
Yeah, just to be clarifying though, right now we're on the topic of the amendment by Alderperson Lampe.
Right.
And so I understand Alderperson Smith, and I largely agree with a lot of his reasoning. But on this topic involving the amendment, I specifically wanted to increase the contingency fund because of the expenditure restraint program, which we are trying to have expenditures go up to that amount allowed so that we get the benefit of that for the following year. And we had the discussion within finance, and we agreed, as much as we wanted to directly pay down our fund balance, we looked at this approach of adding to the contingency with the intent of hopefully not using much, if any of that money, so that we, at the end of the year, a year from now, can pay down or transfer over that into the fund balance, which is way too high. We're using $1,100,000 roughly to balance our budget, and that's not sustainable, because everybody that understands budgets knows that fund balances are there at a point in time, and by using them as a source of revenue, you're depleting them, and each year you're going to continue to deplete by the amount you use that fund each year. We will not have money in that account for a future need, and for that reason, I was very much on the side of wanting to reduce it this year, but because of all the plus and minus and everything we did as a finance committee, I went along with the logic, and I had reassurance from our mayor that his intent is to use it only as an emergency type of need, and with the hope that we're going to largely transfer those dollars to pay down and to make that fund balance a smaller number a year from now. And that's why I'm against the amendment that we're discussing right now.
And could you help clarify which accounts are in play across the original and the amendment, please?
The original request is to reduce 01551160. This is library contribution. It's on page 25 of the budget by $100,000. Then 01543160, street capital outlay, increase $100,000. That's on page 22. And then 05581169, reduce $100,000. This is the annual streets account, page 61 on the budget.
The first one, 01551146. Right. Okay. Any further discussion on the amended version? I was going to take a vote. Okay. I think starts with Lampy, I believe.
Lampy,
Aye.
Berg,
No.
Bartz, Blanky,
No.
Smith,
No.
Arnett,
No.
Wetzel, Moldenhauer,
No.
Davis.
No.
Motion failed.
Okay, and back to original motion by Smith and second by Mollenhauer. 100,000 out of Fund 01551146.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Berg?
Yeah, to the points that are brought up by our Alderperson Smith, I'm very sensitive to the library board and the duties they have and the people that are involved, because I can see the passion and I can see their strong commitment to that library. And I know that they can use every dollar that they have available to them. On the other hand, we have looked at all programs and budgets, and we've looked at fund balances that each of them have, and where we can, because we are trying to, again, address the two things that stood out this year in our budget were our fund balance being used and the debt that we're actually incurring. We went from 5.3 million to 6.1, largely because of a new fire station and other related expenses that made that new debt a high number. And those kind of numbers, again, also become not sustainable if you continue in that kind of a trend. We can't increase 800,000 like we're proposing right now and do that on any kind of a recurring basis, because it just becomes a larger and larger portion of the overall levy, and it becomes a burden that it's going to be bigger each year if we don't deal with it in a proactive way. Alderperson Smith is proposing to reduce it by 100,000. Obviously, that's not big numbers, but it's moving in the right direction. And again, he's doing it in a way that basically leaves our budget alone, but it reorganizes the budget in the way that he's proposing. I just want to, I did, it is related to the library, because I know they have, and Alderperson Smith made reference to their fund balance, but in talking with our finance director, I asked him, based on the current amount that we were proposing to give them of $810,000, and the budget that they have of $1,300,000, that when he, in his own way of looking at it, it appears that when you look at the end of next year, for them to just balance their expenditures with their revenues they have, they're going to need to use their fund balance to some degree. And I think what I heard and what I saw was at the end of next year, it could or should be somewhere in the neighborhood of $374,000 or so. Is that a real number, Mr. Stevens, from what you know?
Yes, I would agree with that, with the assumption that the 2026 budget has a net decrease of approximately $98,800.
Okay. All right. So they're going to still have, even with the budget subsidy we're going to give them, which was $810, they're going to have, again, roughly $374,000 plus or minus 1,000. So under Alderperson Smith and his proposal, it's going to decrease it by another 100,000. They'll still have a 275,000 roughly of money in that fund balance if they use those dollars to continue the operation and the budget that they right now have in place. They'll bring it down obviously to a smaller number, and again, my intent is to move us in the right direction and to look at our budget next year with a new approach, hoping that we have some revenue from building single-family homes that are going to create potentially revenues that we don't have today. Other things that may end up making things in a positive way. That my intent is to not make this a recurring type of intent, and I think Alderperson Smith made the case that, and I went with him to the library board for the same reason. Ideally, working with that $918,000 and giving voluntarily a payment toward debt service for us as a city would have been the easiest approach if they had opted for that, but they chose for their own reasons to reject that reasoning. I asked again just to look at where we've done things as a partner with the library over the years, and I'll be real brief on making these points, but A&D Liquidators is a building that used to be in where the parking lot is now. But in 2006, we acquired it as a city and we tore it down. And the city gave a contribution of about $93,000 toward that expense of $395,000. That became a parking lot with our help, and we did our part to be helpful there. There was 2 buildings on Main Street that were the Jonah's Office Supply and the Edward Jones Building. They had to be taken down for the footprint that the library needed, and again, we were involved in that. I asked for Mark to give me information where he could, and it shows on one of those 2 buildings that we did actually fund that with $180,000 of city money to help with that. The other one was $155,000, and we shared costs 50-50 with the library board on that cost. And so those 3 numbers, $93,000, $75,000 roughly based on 50-50 on the $155,000 purchase of a building, which we then helped tear down as a city street department. So all of that adds up to $348,000, or roughly $350,000. That doesn't factor in, again, our involvement as a street department, helping to tear down buildings to give them the footprint that they needed. They acquired with their own endowment monies, the Pat Wagner property on the corner, and that was roughly $325,000. That was a library fund endowment money. So we've worked each time where we could to help give them the footprint so they had the library that they have now today. And that's what I consider a partnership, and we've done it. And I want to continue with that. But I am bothered by debt because I don't think it's sustainable, and I'm bothered by a fund balance that continues to grow. And when I was on this council before, we never, ever, not once did we ever take anything close to $1 million to try to balance the budget. So that it annoys me that we had to do it, but there's a plan to try to move it down in that direction. And that's why I am working with the proposal that's been brought in by Alderperson Smith, and I think it is a step in the right direction. I know it's a hardship for them to dip into their fund balance to give them their operation money they need to run their library for next year, but it is part of being in this partnership. And we are trying to be an attractive city. We are going to put money into streets beyond what we typically do because we feel as a finance committee that streets are an important infrastructure that give an improved image for our city so that we're viewed more favorably. Other things, low tax rates obviously are appealing to people who look at us for investment. And other projects we're doing as a city are appealing for them to look at our city for investment. We have to create momentum, and that's my approach to making that happen, and that's why I think the motion is well intended, and it'll provide not a lot of relief, but it'll move us in the right direction.
Ms. Davis first.
Okay, so first, just to reiterate one more time, Mr. Smith's motion would not impact the tax levy for this year. So it has no impact on the tax levy for this year. That's number one. Number two, just to build on what Mr. Berg said, with the proposal from Mr. Smith, the library fund balance would be reduced by almost $200,000 down to from $471,000 roughly to $253,000. That would be roughly about 18% of their budget, of their operating budget. So as a comparison, our policy is for our general fund budget that we would keep our fund balance between 25 and 30%. So that's our target, 25 to 30%. With this reduction of an additional $100,000, the library's fund balance would be reduced to 18%. That's a significant cut. And the last thing I would like to say is, I understand and agree with Mr. Smith. I think there was a request to better understand the endowment and what it could be allocated for. The information that we were given by the library director when we had a lengthy discussion about this was that the money in the endowment fund could not be used to pay operating expenses. Operating expenses are paid for through the library fund budget, and that is the budget, that's the fund where we have a proposal of an additional $100,000. So that was the information that was presented to us, that if we reduce this, we were told by the library director that the endowment fund could not be used for operating expenses. So those are the 3 points that I wanted to make. So I'm not in favor of reducing the library fund budget by an additional $100,000.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark, did you have an opportunity to distribute the library capital budget to the council? It was a meeting or two ago, may have been a finance meeting.
They've received the same content of the book. I'm not sure.
Okay, so,
I mean,
so
they received the whole.
I was looking for the written copy, the one that I had emailed. So I just want to make sure that that makes it into the older people's hands, so they have a good idea of where like the 180 came from. I can tell you, being part of the library board at that point, we essentially prepaid some of that, and so things like that 180K that was referenced, that was basically taken out of the city's portion early on. Yeah, that's the one. So pull up your capital project budget that I gave you a couple times ago, and you'll see where that was allocated out of the city bond funds essentially earlier, which eventually reduced our borrowing. We actually borrowed less because we had 180 from the city early, and we counted that against like the 4.83 got dropped down to like a 4.2. I'm simplifying a little bit here. But that's essentially how we did the math back in the day, so that we could borrow less when that came up. So a lot of these, loan tricks and whatnot, we've already gone through this thing. I'm also not really interested in relitigating what the library put in or didn't put in 20 years ago when we bought a parking lot. I mean, that's clawing back departments, beyond time. I mean, I was definitely not involved in the city back then. So I want to be careful with some of those numbers, especially as they pertain to capital purchases. What's on deck here is we mentioned other departments are having challenges. We've, the fire department, which is near and dear to my heart, we looked up all the non-personnel costs. They're taking a cut year over year. Many other departments, Park and Rec is another one that I'm lamenting is taking a cut this year. But this cut would be by far the largest of any department in the city. This would represent about a 16% cut year over year, which I cannot see not having a major impact in terms of hours, programs, or other services that the library would be able to provide. So there's a little bit more I do want to say here because I wasn't entirely sure what was coming tonight, but I assumed it was something. So I do have to say that I really have been guilty recently of injecting two pejoratives, if you will, into our budget discussion. I know you guys have heard from me gimmick. I know you guys have heard from me fat. Pejorative, I just basically mean an emotive word that expresses contempt, which frankly both of these words are and they do. So I really feel a need to kind of explain why it is that I'm using such language in these budget topics. So we've heard two recent library requests. They're both gimmicks in their own way. One was the original ask on the debt, and that one was really sort of invented at a special finance meeting a week after the finance committee had worked for many hours across 4 meetings. And you've heard Alder Davis, heard the mayor just a second ago basically talk about why are we dissecting and pulling this budget apart that we came to a consensus on weeks ago apart at this late date. So we already agreed upon it. We recommended that full budget to council. We found a consensus between some very different points of view all the way back in October. And where I want to be, of course, is basically back on the consensus. Both the requests we're looking at, both the one that goes against debt and the one that we're looking at tonight on the operating thing, we didn't have any of those requests or options on the table during the 2 weeks when we normally hammer out the budget. These were sort of new things that came in after the fact. Now, I do believe the authors of both of these requests did have some heartburn after committing the city to like a $5 million capital plan. Now, I get that. That's a lot of money. But I also believe that the intent of the request was more or less to divert attention away from the spending and subsequent taxation in the budget that we have and kind of make it the library's problem, which I thought was, it's kind of like Tim Robinson's. We're all trying to find the guy who did this, kind of coming back to life as resolutions. It's weird. So we're also in the Fund 1 budget, which we're talking about now, we do also have a couple of things that we are trying to fund this year. They're optional. They're very nice to have. They're on the top of my priority list, certainly, but we're adding a couple of very expensive positions to the city. That's fantastic. But we are increasing spending and we're increasing taxing to pay for it. And as long as we're adults and talk about it in that way, I think we're good. But back on track. The two requests we're looking at, I consider those really to be gimmicks because really any resulting reduction in tax rate, and I understand that we're not reducing tax rate with this resolution, but we're talking about a 0.005 if the numbers are correct. That's like saving 20 bucks out of $4,000 property tax a year. By and large, property owners aren't even going to notice the benefit of that. And finally, I call this a gimmick because, especially on the attack on Fund 20, it had no legal standing. When asked who controls Fund 20, our city attorney quickly clarified it's a library and the library only. If you look at our budget packet on page 83, there's actually a line there that says the library board controls the spending decisions for this fund. It was designed to go nowhere. So taken together, that's really why I consider these requests, either whether it's going after library endowment or going after library operating, really as gimmicks. They're legally unsound. They're meant to distract people away from the taxing and spending that we're doing here. And even if it passed, it really has no effect on the city's bottom line. So the fact that these gimmicks would, either A, devastate the library's ability to fundraise and sustain itself if we went after the endowment fund, or B, devastate the library's ability to operate on a 24/7 basis to all the citizens of the community. I mean, those exist, and that's part of the reason why I keep using the word gimmick around those. So the second word, only halfway through here, I'm sorry. The second word that I do have to talk about is fat. And this budget definitely has a lot of fat we could trim. Alderman Arnett provided ample evidence of that last week when he proposed moving some money around last week. Rather than dig our heels in or insist that we absolutely had to buy that Park and Rec vehicle, we pretty much all agreed that was just fine. So no one here can seriously suggest that our budget is entirely based on needs. Every year, like it is every year, it's a stack of prioritized wants and needs. Second, the target number that we have to develop things like the capital budget is itself an arbitrary number. The capital budget this year, we aimed for $5 million. That's not like we took the absolute needs of the city, added them up to a list, and they magically added up to $5 million. By definition, there's some extra space in there to make sure both our needs and our prioritized wants are taken care of. And we've got a little extra in some places to make sure what we want to get done gets done. So I think it's clear there's fat we could trim in the budget if we wanted to do so. So where is that fat hiding? I direct your attention to a couple of lines that contain arbitrary amounts above and beyond what department heads asked for, or could cleanly apply to estimated costs today. So if you look at 05581169 on page 61, most of the items you're going to see there have specific descriptions like Rock Ridge infrastructure, William Court reconstruction. But that's also where we have $500,000 with a description of just increased street and structure. For a second item, you can look at 05517170 on page 59, where it looks like we still have about $650,000 for City Hall renovations. And that's an amount that at Finance we previously took 2 successful swipes at from its original and rather arbitrary amount of $1 million. And beyond that, there are other prioritized items that we could probably push out another year, just like the Park and Rec vehicle Alderman Arnett identified for us. And as a finance council, that's what we've been doing literally for the last month and a half. We've been looking at, we can defer this, we don't need this now, we can do that later. Those are all those tough decisions, and in particular, Alder Davis led us through a very difficult 4th day where we did make a number of cuts and arrived at a consensus. So I'm grateful for her efforts to get us to a consensus budget. But I'm open to further cuts, I certainly am. But really, if we're serious about reducing spending, I think the first 2 buckets that I described there, the City Hall renovations or the unallocated street areas, are fantastic targets if we're seriously interested in reining in spending in 2026. So, really to sum up, this motion, the attempt to go after library endowment, those are efforts that really are and never were needed. So if this council wants to reduce spending, the way to do it, and stay with me here, is really to reduce spending. So I would like to urge you to defeat this motion, and then if you would like to join me in attacking the budget with other motions, I'd be perfectly happy to do it. I just don't understand why it's the library's responsibility to dig the city out of its budget hole.
Mr. Blanky.
So I just want to respond to that a little bit. One of the items, I'm open to discussion on the $650,000 to City Hall renovations. That, to me, something easily talked about and trimming. But talking about the $500,000, taking that away from streets, that's an absurd suggestion. The number one complaint we all get from everyone in town is the condition of our roads. And to take $500,000 out of that, something that every citizen and every visitor to this city uses, is, to me, a ridiculous suggestion. You also gave us a nice description of the word gimmick. I'd like to get into our Wayback Machine when we borrowed money for a fire station, and someone on this council said that we're getting it for free because we didn't increase taxes. We're not getting it for free, because if we didn't do it, the taxes would have gone down. And borrowing that money is part of the reason, and it was well needed. This isn't an attack on the fire station or those people at all. But I'm saying borrowing that money is part of what put us in the situation we're in now. But to argue that about budget gimmicks, and after having a discussion where we said we're getting a fire station for free because we didn't raise taxes, is a little disingenuous. I also have one question. Alder Davis, you said that by reducing the amount by $100,000, it would decrease the library's fund balance by $200,000. Well, could you walk
sure.
me through that math, please? Because I'm not on finance.
Yep.
So I'm not sure how exactly that works. And
Okay.
I'd like a little bit of clarity on that.
Based on the published budget, the library fund balance will need to use about $98,000, almost $99,000 of fund balance. So that's the current published budget. That's the plan right now. So taking that $99,000 that will be used as part of the plan and adding an additional $100,000 brings us to that $200,000 into the library fund balance.
In Fund 11, right?
Yes, we're talking about Fund 11, library fund budget. So,
Under the assumption that no changes within the library budget would be made, that they would operate at the expenses that they are now, that there's no way to reduce any of those expenses, that that is a static number.
yep. I will add to that the library director did give us a list of personnel and cuts that they are making in anticipation of this. So there are several cuts that have been made. There's a decrease in employee title that will decrease the amount of wages. And she had several things on that list in anticipation. And that was taken in account in this use of the $98,000 of fund balance. So that's part of her budget, these cuts already. That got her to the point where we are in the published budget.
Anybody else want to take? Mr. Arnett?
Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I'm generally disappointed by the tone and language in use by some individuals in this discussion. However, I understand it comes because we're in a difficult place. This is a difficult conversation. We inherited a deficit budget of nearly $1 million. And I do appreciate what I'm hearing from some individuals in terms of a newfound willingness to focus on real cost reductions, operational cost reductions, not one-time things, but things that will over time pull the budget down to a number within our means. Because if we move ahead with this change, this isn't the last of these conversations we're going to have. And it's not the last of these changes that are going to be proposed. This is the beginning of this effort, not the end. Thank you.
There's no way to respond to every inaccuracy that I have heard this evening, but I will respond to a few. First, the suggestion that this motion tonight is somewhere completely out of line from efforts that were made over huge numbers of hours invested in this finance committee approach to craft the budget is absolutely ludicrous. Now, as it relates to my efforts to try to reduce our expenditures for the benefit of a more fiscally responsible budget and a budget that respects the taxpayers substantially more than I have found a willingness on the part of some members to promote, I made a very low-key motion in the Finance Committee to reduce the city subsidy to the library operational budget by $25,000. Panned by some as too insignificant to even worry about. And the net effect of that was a 2-2 vote, and the effort to cut the library subsidy was useless beyond that. I couldn't get a $25,000 cut. So I simply resolved, fine, we'll try to do it in the least painful way possible, which was to use an approach with the endowment account. And when that was met with an absolute stonewall by the library board, then to make a motion here this evening. So the notion that this is something that was not brought up when it should have been and was and is now untimely is just categorically untrue. Excuse me. So, first of all, it was raised. Second of all, the proposal this evening is not onerous. Now, there's a word that was used to suggest that this was patently unfair. The state statute is the greatest defender of the library, the financial interests of library boards across this state. If we were to rely on what the state statutes require in terms of minimum funding for the library, it would be $527,000. That's the minimum amount that needs to be given. With this totally non-onerous proposed cut of $100,000, we are still providing an additional $183,000 to the library operational budget over and above the minimum. How in the world can that be viewed as somehow onerous? Third, this proposal is not a gimmick. Trying to be a committed advocate for the taxpayers of this community is not easy. Spending is always easier than cutting. And we have had a history in this city of spending and borrowing way out of line with our capacity to move forward. I got on this council, and for the very first time in a long time, I'm on the Finance Committee. I am on the Finance Committee to try to represent the taxpayers of this community. I am trying a number of things, many of which aren't necessarily at the point in our city's outlook where people are ready to accept it. Sooner or later, the financial difficulties that are coming are going to cause people to look at some things that perhaps right now they're not ready to look at. But I'm raising them not as gimmicks, but because they are an authentic approach to trying to respect the taxpayers of this community. Now, we can diminish the significance of incremental approaches to try and move us in the direction of greater financial responsibility. There are an awful lot of people in this community that are living on the financial edge. I know people in this community that go to bed at night with 2 overcoats on because they can't run their heat all night. I know people who are at the point whose properties are at the point of losing their decades-long homestead because they can't afford the continued increase in costs. And it's not all taxes, it's increased expenditures that make it literally unaffordable for too many people in our community to be able to continue the life that they have been used to for so many years. Somebody needs to fight for them, and there are a lot of people on this council that are doing that, and I'm thankful for that. But I am telling you this, if you think that's a gimmick, go talk to the people who are on the edge right now. And maybe they wished we would undertake a few more gimmicks in their behalf. And lastly, it is not just the library that is being looked at as our way out of this problem. Night after night after night, there have been efforts where across the board cuts have been made in one department after another. Unlike a member of the library board who is understandably dedicated to the exclusive interest of the library, a member of the city council has to be fair in the approach to all of the departments across the board. There have been cuts after cuts after cuts in many departments. We're not looking just at the library. And I will tell you, last night I spent 2 hours on the Transit Commission trying to help their financial bottom line come out right, because the city's contribution to the city share has been substantially cut. Their fund balance over time has dramatically diminished. Why are they in the position? Why did I help trying to spend 2 hours last night putting them in a position where we could continue to run an effective transit shared ride cab system for the benefit of all of our community? Because that was their share of the contribution to cuts that were made across the board in department after department after department. It isn't just the library. The library has a $1.3 million total annual budget, and their combined fund balance is $1.3 million. There is the area that suggests to me that it is appropriate to have the balanced approach across the board to all of the departments. And lastly, it is a member of the council. It is our mayor. It is people that have to go to the electorate of this city and ask for their vote in good faith that are the ones that are tasked with watching out and making sure that we're being fair to the taxpayers, even as we pursue efficient and value-laden services in our community. So that's the approach I take. And I'm not here to apologize for it. You can call it a gimmick, but from my point of view, it's perfectly appropriate and very timely for a whole lot more of us to fight aggressively for the taxpayers and to be willing to make some difficult calls. And that's why we've got this motion. And as long as I'm on this council, that's exactly the kind of motion we're going to continue to get until we start being more fiscally responsible and taxpayer sensitive.
Mr. Molnar, you want to say anything?
I agree with Alderman Smith 100%. I think he's right, and I think the library, they're doing well, and it's not like we're going to cut them every year. In this particular situation, I think the library could give up a little bit of room to help us out. I mean, I know the Finance Committee has been looking at a lot of different items in different situations, and the library is just another one of those as far as I'm concerned. We got to look at everybody in the city in a fair way. If other ones can do some cutting or can help out, I would think the library could also maybe do a little to help us out.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a few things that I am concerned about, and one, of course, is whether or not this is only a one-time cut or this is only a 2-year cut is an honest thing to say. when we do our budgets, we generally we use a baseline of the previous year almost always, and then we work off of typically 0 or small percentages of that number. So if we come to a substantially reduced number next year, I just don't think that it is realistic that this or a future council would arrive at the library's number and to magically decide to add, 16, 17% to that number to restore funding that was in place of a previous year. So because of the way we tend to do budgets, I tend to not trust any of the assertions that this would be a one-year cut. I think that this would actually turn out to be a structural cut for years to come. I am concerned that the difference between charging or basically defunding the library or not basically defunding it from the perspective of, are we taking 4.7%, which is the current proposal for $40,000 a year. We had talked about, as Alder Smith mentioned, a $65,000 cut, or 7.6%. We're now talking about a $140,000 a year cut to the library, which is about a 16% cut. And in even that variation, again, assuming that I keep coming back to this $20 a year off of like $4,000 a year property taxes. I don't know if that's going to make the difference of putting somebody in their house and out of house. And in fact, when we talk about where are the people who are on the edge going, which services are they using, in many cases, it is the library. We have a lot of families, we have a lot of elderly, we have a lot of people who basically can't afford basic entertainment, whether it happens to be expensive cable packages, purchasing their own books, being able to get things in their native language. Those people are all using the free resources that you have available at the library. So in terms of making sure that we're caring for those people that are so-called on the edge, it's of just preeminent importance to me that we continue to have a 7-day-a-week facility for folks like that to be able to continue to receive some of the basic services that you would expect in a modern community. I do also want to talk about where we can go for some additional data on how onerous the funding level is for the library at a particular level or not level. And for that, we typically turn to some of the Department of Public Instruction statistics. I know Alder Arnett is intimately familiar with all these, but the Department of Public Instruction also handles library statistics. And one of the ones that they compile for us and for other libraries is the cost per capita. And that's used essentially to rate libraries and figure out which ones are more expensive to operate, which ones are least expensive to operate. And we know from the budget memo, and this certainly is in line with my experience in the past as well. Again, the 2024 statistics, which were cited in the memo that we received at the Finance Council, states that the Watertown's cost per capita is $37.19 per person, which remains the lowest in Jefferson and Dodge counties. So any cuts that we make reduces our per capita cost further. If we were to be in line with a lot of the per capita costs of our surrounding libraries, we would actually be looking at increasing the library budget by $100,000 or more, and that really isn't in the cards. So any way you want to slice it, when we talk about potential efficiencies at the library, we are definitely talking about making cuts to the most efficient library you're going to be able to find in easy driving distance. So as Alder Davis, I believe, noted in this memo, there are also specific cuts. With the $40,000 of cuts that are already on the table for this year, they're looking at cutting 10 part-time staff down to 8. With the $65,000, we thought during finance at least that would be another full-time person, taking that 10 down to 7. And so, just eyeballing here, we're essentially looking at cutting, another 3 people if we went above. I don't know. I'm just sort of guesstimating here, but another $25,000. That's another couple of part-time staff, perhaps some hours reduced as well. And like I said, if we're truly concerned about those who are living on the edge in this community, it's vital that we keep the doors of this building open every single day.
Mr. Berg.
I've heard comments too in the last 20 minutes, and it reminds me of some of the logic that was from a previous council that thought tearing down a bathroom at the park and at the Riverside Park would be an inexpensive type of endeavor, and it turned into $1.1 million, which they brought down, thankfully, to $750,000 for a bathroom. You know, and that's embarrassing to have to spend that kind of money on something that really, it appears, could have been handled in a different way. But in the end, we are who we are, and we're trying to do the best we can. And I'm just looking at each of these departments that we looked at to try to make the budget proposal for next year. And Park and Rec was targeted. You know, I felt, you know, in my own way, I felt we looked at them as a remedy for trying to help us fix our problem. And we went to parkland dedication funds to help them with playground equipment. We did other things as far as they had a $400,000 new building, and I actually made the motion to take it out of the budget and to deal with the existing facilities as best we could, which we then replenished back to about $125,000 to make that building, that shed, more safe and sound for now. And that was the right thing to do. But in the end, they were targeted as a department in a fairly aggressive way. And I'm impressed with that Christine and her ability to deal with that in a way that she called me and said she'd like to have a visit just to go over things for the future. But I envy people like that who have to deal with, you know, these kinds of plans they have, and then they have to deal with the reality of changes that we as a finance or our council end up making on their programs. But they're resilient, and that's what makes them good department heads. And I for one, with a decent that endowment fund, whatever that legal opinion is, I'm sure it's the way it is. But I would be on the side, if I were on that library board, to look at the definition of what are allowable uses for that $918,000 to see what is possible for addressing some of the capital needs of that existing library going forward as a way of helping the operational budget that they currently are having concerns with. And I would not be on the side of you know, cutting people in order to prove a point when you have right now a healthy fund balance that you can use at least for now, and then work on a plan B for going forward. So if they want to say, you know what, we got rid of people, now are you happy? No, I'm not, but I wouldn't have done what they did if that's their approach to fix the problem. So I think we are potentially going to enact this, and if it does happen, they do have a problem, and I wish them well because I want them to be successful. I know the people that go to that library, and I know how valuable it is as an asset of our town. And I gave the examples of how we've worked in the past, and I want us to continue to do going forward. But I do think that the addressing fund balances and addressing debt are two big concerns of our council, and I think we did it the best we could for now, and I think it's a step forward. So I'm going to vote for the motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Mr. Wetzel.
Calling the roll.
No, Mr. Wetzel speaking.
I have four things real quick. 2 years ago, when we were going over the budget, one alderman said this is one of the best budgets I've ever seen. Last year, the same alderman said this is the best budget I've ever seen. And I don't like that we go back to last year and say the budget messed us up for this year. When people here said this is the best one we've ever seen. I don't like the insinuation of that now. Secondly, I echo Alderman Lampy when he said, I don't know if this is going to be a 1 year or 2 year thing. We know how government works. This is not in Washington, this is not Madison, I understand. But we know how it is when you get something, it's hard to turn it down the next time. And basically, I think as a foundational level, the library was given money, was given gifts. People gave to the library, for the library, to be used by the library, for the library. How can we say, let's give it to somebody else? I don't understand that. I wonder if, as Attorney Levi had said, it's maybe legality. You can't do that. I'm not sure of the law. It has to stay where it was endowed. 20 years when they need an addition to the library, the person who gives 30,000 now and 30 years from now their kids say, let's give 70,000, they'll say no way, because it's going to go to fix the streets, which we need streets. The human factor there is people are going to remember how we use that money. And lastly, Alderman Smith said there are people who are sleeping with two coats on, and I feel bad for them as well. But legally, they need to go to the county and state, because your heat cannot be turned off during winter months, during the cold months. It is illegal, it is wrong. So those people can get help. I would suggest going to those people and saying, let's go to the county, let's go to the state and get that money. And the reason I heard it, I just heard it today on the radio. I didn't write it down, but they said, you cannot do that. I said, oh, interesting.
One more comment. Just in closure, I don't think any of us believe that cutting is going to fix our problems going forward. In the best, most proactive, best way possible is to have growth as a city. And within these departments, we have to have policies and procedures and activities which actually generate and incentivize for growth to occur. Because with that, it's going to make our jobs so much easier. And I think we are working in that direction by some of the steps we've taken, and that will potentially help us starting next year with what is creating right now some momentum on the side of new housing and other areas where we can create growth, which will create revenues, which we then have that we don't have now. That should make our job easier. And I would just encourage each of us to be on the side of being pro-growth, obviously in a realistic, responsible way. I'm not saying growth without reason. It has to make sense, and it has to be the right kind of growth, but we need that. We haven't had it like we should. The only thing we've had is we've had some inflated valuations of property, and it's given a false impression of value in this town. But what they did is they adjusted mill rates down, and they adjusted the fact that it looks like a lower tax rate times a higher value, and for some they might think I'm going to get less tax, but they're not. Almost all these people are getting higher taxes because of the amount of growth in the valuation of property that we're seeing right now. It's not sustainable either on that topic, but that's not the right kind of growth. The right kind of growth is new construction, more people coming into our town and building and adding those additional revenues from assessments on new construction, new activity. That's going to bring the kind of growth we need, not inflated values on property.
Okay, Megan. Or Smith, I believe.
Smith?
Is this the vote on the motion?
Yes.
Aye.
Arnett?
Aye.
Wetzel? No. Moldenhauer?
Aye.
Davis? Lampy? Berg?
Yes.
Bartz?
No.
Blanky?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-4.
When does the 2/3 bit kick in?
After a public hearing's done. Okay. Anything else before we close the public hearing? Mm-hmm. Oops, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm John Kaddish. I live at 204 West Main Street, right across from the library. I know you're saying this is not an attack on the library. It just seems that that's what the discussion is here. And we're talking $100,000. It was originally 200, now it's 100. I looked at my own tax bill. $100,000, when we're talking about $1.1 million, that is the issue of having to take from another fund to try to get the balanced budget for next year. We're talking $100,000 of that. On my tax bill, the city amount of my tax bill, that would increase my taxes by about $2.30. just the perspective here as to what effect this will have on the library, I see it every day. And I just can't believe that there isn't, if you have to have that 100,000, absolute, like that's make or break for this year, for next year, and there's no other place to do it. And it has to come out of an endowment fund, which I couldn't totally hear from the Finance Committee meeting because I couldn't really zoom into it. But it sounded like that hadn't happened before, to where an endowment fund had money taken from it. But if you want to take money from a fund that has solely donated money, I haven't heard anybody talk about the town square. They have a future fund there, over $100,000. The program director of the town square is leaving her position. I doubt it's going to be filled. Programming has declined year over year there. It's been there for 3 years. I just don't see why that money isn't on the table. It's donated money as well. It's separate from the Park and Rec. It's a separate entity. Why is that not on the table? It's just seems like everything has to be directed to the library. And we're talking an institution that's been there for 118 years. The town square, I like the town square. I think it's a good thing, but also millions of dollars of taxpayer money went into that without a referendum. The library had a referendum, passed by 62% during a presidential election year. And I just think it's a huge disrespect to that majority who saw that that money was going to be borrowed by the city and be the responsibility of the city to pay for that and to take on that debt. And then there was over $6 million of donations that came in after that. So I just would hope that there is some other way. If you're just looking to satisfy $100,000, which I know it's a number, but I'm just saying myself, I'm more than willing to pay that $2.50 bucks. I know other people, everybody on this board, I'm sure can afford $2, maybe $10 bucks, even 20 for some who have multiple properties of $1 million or more. I don't think that's too much of an ask, because I also agree with Mr. Arnett, to where I do not believe that this is a one-shot deal. And I just see it happening year after year, bigger each time, and I don't understand the concept. The library is a fixture. It is a draw. It is something that helps people on a daily basis who are trying to get work, who are trying to use computers to get their resumes done, trying to do things that betters their lives every single day, 7 days a week. One of the few libraries open on Sundays because we want it there 7 days a week. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much.
Mayor, can you remind them to fill out a form, please?
Sure. Yeah.
I think because we weren't sure what was going to be discussed tonight, I didn't know if I wanted to speak tonight, so, we're kind of blindsided a little bit. So I find it interesting, sitting in here listening about the library budget, just to clarify, keep sustaining year after year after year cuts. The first figure that Mr. Stevens supplied for our fund balance is incorrect. Part of that figure are donations, and I know we had a discussion about that, and you say you do not segment out what actually is fund balance and what actually is donations. When we get smaller donations from people, $1,000, my daughter died, please buy some books. We get a donation from the Greater Watertown Community Health Foundation. They go into that. We separate that on our end. Those are all earmarked, especially to buy things or purchase things as needed. So really our fund balance is more like $360,000. You now are taking another $200,000 that we have to spend off of our fund balance for next year, okay? Now we're really down there. But you're not considering every month I send you a board packet. You'll have to excuse me, I'm feeling a little emotional tonight. But there's a sheet in there that tells you what was not planned for in our budget. That figure now is at $55,000. That will have to come out of the fund balance also. We don't have any money to buy books. Next year's budget for 2026 for the whole library to buy books for adults, for children, for teens is $27,000. And this year it wasn't much better, 30, 35. So we've been pulling money out of our fund balance to purchase books so that we are a valued member of the Bridges Library System. I compare our library to Pewaukee, Oconomowoc, Muskego, and they are providing more resources to Bridges than we do here. We are kind of slipping in our responsibility as being part of the collective. So really, I just wanted you to know, when you voted, Mr. Blanky tonight, who was on the library board at one time, it is a slow death for the library, because we cannot sustain this. Maybe it is just for 1 year. I doubt it's for 1 year. We are never going to see those funds back again, never. And I think everyone here knows that. So I want the city of Watertown to know that this was the city council that started the death of the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Barb. Thank you for the tour.
The library is a jewel of this city. It is a place I would bring young families if I wanted them to move to this country, to this city. One of the things I have watched happen in this city, in this county, in this state over the last 20 years is us refusing to maintain things. What a city has to do in order to have quality things is to, one, be willing to pay up front for quality, and that happened with the referendum. The people in this community said, this is what we want. Now it is the responsibility of us to maintain it. And again, once again, they are being cut. They are being cut by 40,000 without this 100,000. So don't say they're not being cut. They are being cut. They have been cut before, again and again and again. And that is why we're in the situation we are with our streets, because that's what we've done with our streets for years. It is time for this council, for this county, for this state to realize we have to pay to keep things quality. This whole state, including this city, have gone down and down and down because all we keep saying is we have to cut, cut, cut. That is not how you make a quality place to live. You make a quality place to live by willing to do what you have to do to maintain it. I am one of the people that have donated to this library. My husband and I are now in a place that we are comfortable and can donate. I would have to think about donating twice right now to anything in this city or in this state that a governmental body might be able to take that money away. That's not what I donated it for. And I will not donate again if I think that is going to happen to my money in this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for your work. I don't always agree with you, and you don't always agree with me. But when I come here to talk to you about the legacy of Watertown, Wisconsin, who I've lived here for a long time, and I love this place. But I want you to remember everything that you do looks to the future. Unfortunately, tonight, that wasn't what we were doing. We need to have some good conversations. I would like to ask each one of you, and I'm sincere about this, tell me something you know we cut back on. You know, you have a committee you work on or whatever. I am very interested in that because it does seem as if the library is being identified and this fund, which is a legacy to some people, has been identified as a low-hanging fruit. So, Ms. Davis, anything you would like to share with us that you know? And I'm
During this time, we generally don't have a back and forth.
Oh,
so
well,
it's more of
that
a listening time.
that doesn't really work, does it? Maybe that might be something you can consider to change, because this is what democracy looks like. It's when someone comes forward and says, "I don't understand what you just did. Could you explain it to me?" Does that make sense? I would like you to revisit that. So think about Watertown's legacy. Hey, think about Beaver Dam. I understand there's a very, something that's going on there. But do you think they were worried about how they were going to pay for the library in Beaver Dam right now? They got some other things that there's going to be a lot of growth. Please consider this in all that you do and make decisions on that. I thank you again for all that you try to do. Mr. Stevens, I thank you for all you've done, and I look forward to hearing answers. It's very important to our community.
Thank you, Mrs. Phelps.
Mayor Stocks?
Oh, Barbara Phelps, 119 South Church Street. Sorry.
Correct me if wrong, that's a state statute, or what is that? We cannot, it's not just Watertown, is it?
Not talk to each other, you mean?
Back and forth?
Not a statute.
Not a statute?
Okay. Anybody else was all?
I don't live in Watertown. I'm a city employee at Watertown Library.
You can come up, ma'am. Yes, no problem. State your address, please, and your name.
My name is Danielle Bailey. My address is in Jefferson, and I work at 100 South Water Street. Does that cover it?
Okay.
I am an emotional human being. I've heard from some emotional human beings tonight, and I just want to be clear that I'm the face of what you're talking about. I don't think that the library is going to come from my job right away because I have an extremely supportive board and director. However, I want you to be clear that when you're talking about cutting this money, you're talking about my job, my life, my money, and it does cover more than just my utilities. Every day I give a library card to someone who says, I've just moved to Watertown, I've just moved back to Watertown. I've never come to work and not heard someone say, this is a beautiful building, you guys have done such an amazing job. Bridges had this whole thing where people had to go around to all the libraries, and we were counted as like the top of the list almost on everybody's list that made it to all of those. You guys did a great job with this library here, and I'm from Madison originally. But at the end of the day, when I hear $100,000, like, yeah, that's more than my salary, but it is a drop in the bucket of what you're talking about. And when you're talking about cutting 16%, we took a cut, like, right, you all caught this, right, that we took a cut before you're even talking about the $100,000 or $200,000. I think that can just about cover it. I think a lot of other people made some great points. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody wish to comment in the public hearing? Anyone else? Okay. I'll then close the hearing at 8:34. Okay, move on to reports. We have the Housing Authority minutes from September 24th, Licensing Board minutes from October 8th, WMSP Board of Directors minutes from October 21st, Finance Committee minutes from October 27th, Public Safety and Welfare minutes from November 5th, and tourism minutes from November 13th. Mr. Barks, go ahead.
Yeah, just to note that the licensing board minutes from October 8th has the same error that we discussed at the licensing board the last meeting.
Your first and second to both of them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'll move on then. Communication recommendations?
Mayor?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't see it. I thought I saw a hand. Go ahead, Mr. Lampy.
I know we're a little bereft of good news these days, but if you look at the tourism minutes here in the packet, that's page 15. There's a very quick mention here under new business of 4B for something called Placer AI. And there's a little bit of a blurb there that talks about Watertown Riverfest. So this is some technology that we got a first-hand view at Riverfest a while back, and essentially what this is this tracks the cell phones of everybody who's in and around an area. So using this technology, we found out, for example, we were able to bring in over 40,000 people for Riverfest, and we thought it was in the 30s because we have more accurate data. We just counted the people who have their cell phones in their pockets, and on top of that, we watched what businesses they went into locally, where they went before and after the event. And so what this is doing for the Tourism Commission is essentially the same thing. It allows us to more accurately target collections of business that naturally function together because people go from point A to point B. It allows us to more accurately target our tourism dollars and find out which other communities people are coming from. So I just wanted to throw this out here. There are some good things still happening in the city. This is one of the many ones where Robin has been an advocate for this technology for many years, and I was very, very happy to see that she finally got this across the line and is going to be able to make our business community that much more effective, especially as we're coming up to some additional construction projects that are going to create some disruptions. So if you hear Placer AI, if you hear the tourism cell phone data project, that's what you're looking at in 4B here.
Thank you, Mr. Lampy. Okay, we can. I'm sorry, you guys have bowls in front of your computer, so I can't see the fingers.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You know what, Jonathan made a great point, and I'm on the tourism board, and he hit on all the right points as far as the benefits of this technology, which our tourism board is in a position to acquire. I think it's roughly $19,000 over a 2-year period, but it's going to have incredible benefit for the city as a whole, but it has to be recognized through the tourism board. That's the entity that's actually acquiring this. Other boards and departments can work with tourism to access information that will benefit them, but it has to go through a way of being regulated by the entity that we're getting it from. And that's why it's got to have a tourism type of housing unit location. But it will have incredible benefit. I'm not a technology person, so I probably can't appreciate it like Jonathan, but I hear nothing but benefits on how it's going to give us more accurate data, on everything that's going to give us an awareness of activities and how well they're doing and how well they could do, or where the people are coming from, and a lot more just awareness than we have currently. And that's really a benefit that our city will get great benefits from. And I appreciate making that point.
Ms. Davis.
Perhaps I'm the only one on this council who finds it a little disconcerting, this technology that tracks our cell phone usage and can tell where we are at all times.
You're not the only one.
I find it very uncomfortable, and I don't like the thought of it. I know maybe that's the world we're living in, but I don't enjoy it.
Okay. We'll move on to communication recommendations. We have the Fire Department monthly report for September. Chief's in the room if anyone's got any questions on it. Okay, and we'll move on to employee recognitions. You want to go first?
Why not? All right, I'll bring some joy. Council, I appreciate you all taking the time tonight to honor Lieutenant Greg Wellick for his 20 years of service with the City of Watertown and the Watertown Fire Department. Since joining Watertown Fire Department 20 years ago, Greg has grown into a dependable lieutenant, a previous union president, and the person we trust with the responsibility of the upkeep of our fleet, which includes the engines, the ambulances, and any specialized vehicles that our community depends on a daily basis. From frontline response to department initiatives like community outreach and awareness initiatives, he's been a vital element to this department over the years. Most people are unaware of the work that Greg does behind the scenes, including tracking repairs, coordinating with vendors, organizing replacements, and ensuring that the rig gets to where it needs to every time somebody calls 911. He has taken the approval of the Opticom project since the word go and managed the oversight of it. We're very excited that we're almost done with installing everything in every vehicle for the city of Watertown Fire Department. He's also taken on the projects of making sure we get final inspections of apparatus. He's traveled out of state numerous times to get our tender, our engine, and in a couple days he'll be going to get our ambulance. I'm happy to report that this is all amazing stuff that he does. And even on the most challenging occasions, he's calm, he's problem solving, and he has a meticulous attention to detail that I appreciate. He keeps our people moving in the right direction. Because of your continued support, Greg is able to ensure our staff have the tools and resources necessary for an effective response. So thank you for supporting our apparatus. Your investment directly strengthens his ability to lead, making informed decisions on equipment, facilities, and operational needs that keep our community safe. So on behalf of the City of Watertown and our fire department and the people we serve, Greg, can you stand up and let us express our appreciation for your 20 years of hard work. Thank you.
Nice job. Thank you.
I'd like to recognize Aaron Giles. He's been working for the city for 5 years. I'll get to see you later, Pete. Okay. Andrew Byer. You want to come up here or you want to stay there? Okay. Nice microphone. That's good. Okay. You were stand by me. It looks weird. This one, I'm taller than you, though. Okay, that's fine. Sure. I first met Andrew when I was on council when he was an intern back in 2013. He became our civil engineer in November of 2015. After leaving Watertown for a year, he returned. Andrew took on the role of assistant city engineer in November of 2020 and has been the Watertown's director of public works since January of 2024. Andrew Byer consistently demonstrates exceptional leadership and expertise in many of Watertown's public works projects. He has a deep commitment to quality in every project he takes on. Andrew has an ability to analyze complex problems, break them down into actionable steps, and deliver effective solutions. Whether working independently or collaborating with others, he approaches each challenge with clarity, creativity, and professionalism. Andrew is very reliable, a great communicator, and one of the best leaders the city has. Andrew is very team-focused, has a strong work ethic, and a team-focused mindset. He will do anything for his team and is the most honest and humble person I've ever met. Andrew always exceeds expectations. He not only meets project requirements, but often enhances them. He answers my emails all the time, too. He identifies opportunities to improve efficiency, performance, and design. His dedication to Watertown comes from his heart and cares deeply about the community in which he has lived his entire life. Picture? You want a goofy one, Lisa, or no?
No, play it straight. No. And we're glad about that.
Nice job, Andrew.
I lost this for a second. Okay, next we'll move on to new business. Number 9, review and take possible action on 2026 proposed budget. If anybody has anything else, we can move on. Mr. Lampy.
We had a previous discussion where I believe we reduced our target debt from 5 to 4.9. Did I get that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we're sitting at 4.9, not 5. There was previously some interest in reducing that by another $100,000, so this seems like the appropriate time. I'd like to make a motion to reduce 2 of the categories, so the ones I spoke about earlier, 05, 58, 11, 69, and 05, 51, 71, 70, both by $50,000, which would be a total of $100,000, which would take our
What are
debt.
the categories?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, to repeat that, account number 05, 58, 11, 69, 50K, 05, 51, 70, 70, 50K, for a total of $100,000. Those are detailed, I believe, on page 59 and page 61.
What are the categories?
I don't have my book with me.
Mark, do you have the...
0558 1169 on page 61 is the annual streets, and 0558 7170 is municipal building on page 59.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Lampy to remove $50,000 from each of those accounts, and a second by Davis. Okay. Questions, comments? Mr. Lampy, go ahead first.
The intent of this basically is to accord with some previous discussions where we were looking to reduce debt from 5 down to 4.8 by $200,000. We were looking at a different method to do it previously. The one that passed tonight, as our finance director just said, reduced that from 5 to 4.9. This motion would take that down from 4.9 to 4.8 by addressing 2 of the categories where it looked like we had some fungible funds for City Hall renovations and for the unspecified street infrastructure.
Go ahead, Mr. Arnett.
I would be in support of reducing the item about the municipal building. I would be against the reduction in annual streets. So it's unfortunate that they're both in the same motion, and therefore I would oppose this motion as it currently is phrased.
Ms. Davis.
I just wanted to point out something that you may already know, everybody on this council, but this year the annual streets fund through Fund 5 was funded at an additional $500,000. So we took the amount, generally the amount we typically spend for the streets projects, and allocated an additional $500,000. I would say that in my years being on the council, this originally at the $5 million mark, even still here we are at the 4.9, is the most I've ever seen allocated for this fund, Fund 5. And so I do think it is reasonable to reduce the $500,000 additional that's been allocated to streets, to reduce it by $50,000 to make it $450,000 for streets, which again is above and beyond what we typically spend.
Just to explain what I'm about to do, I'm going to vote against my own motion and reoffer a clean one as suggested by Alder Arnett.
So, point of order, Mr. Mayor. He can withdraw his motion rather than wait for a vote against it.
I would opt to withdraw it if my second's fine with that.
Oh,
Okay, motion
yes,
to.
I'm fine.
Okay, we'll cancel the motion and second then.
I would alter, I'd offer the alternate motion, which would subtract $100,000 from 05517170 on page 59, which is the City Hall renovations for 100K. Similar intent.
I can second that.
The steps have to be redone in the front and need a new boiler, so you might be pushing to the point that we won't be able to get a boiler. So then we'll be taking out of the contingency account instead, just so you know. If it's cold in here, don't say anything to me about it. I'm just going to tell you right now.
Alderberg is trying to get your attention. I'm sorry about the bows.
His finger has to get above the red thing in front of his computer, so.
Robert, I think in finance, we had 3 different parts of that City Hall renovation that came up to $1 million, and then we reduced it down, and I understood that what we came up with was potentially enough to address 2 of the 3 projects that were planned. And so subtracting 100,000, I think, is going to affect our ability to do 2 of those 3 projects.
Yeah, and the hope is to maybe renovate those bathrooms. We need to get those done too. So there are some things that need to be done, so.
Renovate them to be ADA compliant.
Renovate to make them ADA compliant for people that need that.
I think that's an important notation. We're not just renovating them to put some new porcelain sinks in. We need them to be ADA
Handicap
compliant.
accessible for the courtroom, for in here. Those bathrooms are from 1962, so. If the boiler's out, we will have the meetings in here in January.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Blanky?
Do we have cost estimates on those 2 projects?
Yeah.
Or the 3 projects? And
They're tentative, very tentative.
Tentative, and I think you might be going over that, but if you have additional money and it's extra from after doing the bathrooms and boiler, I think we could obviously go to finance and put them in the roads. So if we have $43,000 left over after doing the bathroom and the boiler, I'm sure Andrew can find $43 worth of roads to put the money into. I'll go to finance with that, so just a thought. Like you, I get a lot of phone calls about roads too, so that's my #1 priority as well.
I need to correct you, Mayor.
Oh.
We wouldn't be able to do that.
We wouldn't be able to do it?
No. What we borrow
Oh.
the money for
Has to be there?
has a specified list.
Okay.
And so it would have to be municipal building repair.
Okay.
What would be the bottom, with that reduction of 100,000, what is going to be in that City Hall renovation total that we would have to do the projects that were identified as important?
552, 426.
This is probably the 3rd time we've looked to cut money from that particular borrowing, but Ms. Davis?
I just wanted to clarify, right now, it looks like the indication for the municipal building is for boiler replacement in north parking lot. I don't remember I thought that was where we left it. We allocated approximately enough for a boiler replacement in north parking lot.
We had the boiler, the parking lot, and the bathrooms, I believe, and designs were originally $1 million.
Right.
And money was cut that did not correlate with the funds thought for each of those. So money was already cut. So I guess until we get the bids, we wouldn't know. But that's something as if you need a new car that's for $45,000 and you make a motion to cut $10,000 out of it, you can't really do much with that 35,000 for that car anymore. Same thing with what's been put towards City Hall.
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Lampy.
Since we are talking the City Hall renovations here, I would like to look at that in the context of the total expected renovations for City Hall, and we've been looking at numbers there, including this year, next year, whenever. I believe somewhere in the neighborhood of about $6 million, maybe closer to 7, but let's hope it's around 6. With the number that I'm keying in is actually the 2027 number from our capital improvements budget. As everyone on the council knows, we have ample ability to take on additional debt. We have enormous borrowing capacity because our percentage of allowed borrowing is a fraction of what it's allowed to be under state statute. And so, frankly, I'm okay with another deferral in terms of trying to sneak some interior renovations underneath our budget and our normal capital budget, because my expectation is that we're going to do some extraordinary borrowing of the 20-year bonding sort when we actually look at major City Hall renovations when they come through.
Okay.
Lampy.
Aye.
Berg.
No.
Bartz.
No.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Arnett. Wetzel. Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Davis. Motion failed. Majority vote.
You need 6. Anything else? Okay, move on. Miscellaneous business. Payroll summary, October 15th through October 28th. Questions, comments on that? Okay, B, paid invoices report from October 2025. And cash investments from October 31st. Okay, next, review and take action committee appointments. Okay, motion by Wetzel. Second by Arnett. Okay. I think we need a roll call, right?
Wetzel. Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Davis. Lampy. Berg.
Aye.
Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Arnett. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next, under licenses. Licensing, let's see. Review and take action application for a Class B malt liquor license from JP Watertown Bowl LLC DBA, Watertown Bowl North, located at 766 North Church Street for licensing year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. We would need it with conditions to include past city inspections and surrender the current license on the premises. Mr. Bartz?
Motion for conditional approval based on the terms you just listed.
Okay, okay, motion by Bartz. Thank you. Second by Arnett. Okay, any discussion on that?
Point of clarification again, what topic are we on right now?
We're on licenses B.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed and abstentions.
Abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Blanky. Okay, next, C, review and take action application for a Class B malt liquor license from JP Watertown Bowl LLC, DBA Watertown Bowl 18, located at 102 West Katy Street, for licensing year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Also with the same conditions, passing inspections and surrender of current license.
Motion for conditional approval.
Motion by Bartz. Second by Arnett. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And abstentions? Okay, thank you. All right, next D, review and take action application for a Class B malt liquor license from the Goose and Gander LLC DBA. The Goose and Gander located at 200 North 2nd Street for licensing year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026.
Approval with the conditions as noted.
Okay, motion by Blanky. And the conditions, successor conditional use permit, passing city inspections. Second by Bartz. With those with that condition?
Yes.
Okay. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. E, review and take action application for a Class B malt liquor license from CSP Enterprises LLC DBA Bismarck's Main Street Bar, located at 103 and 105 East Main Street for licensing year July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026.
Move for approval.
Okay, motion by
With the
Blank.
conditions as noted.
Yeah, with the conditions,
Successor conditional use permit being filed, EIN letter being submitted, pass city inspections, and surrender of current license issued to the premises.
with those four conditions, motion by Blanky.
I'll second that.
Okay. Second by Mollenhauer. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ordinances. Ordinance 25-23, amend section 453-6, acquisition of facilities, rates, and charges, sponsored by myself and the Finance Committee on its first reading. Thank you, Mr. Arnett. Second by Wetzel, I believe. Okay. Questions, comments on that? Mr. Berg?
Yeah, I did, at the finance, I did initially think it made some sense. I've looked at it more critically, and I just see too much on the side of giving permission for increases that are not warranted. And I understand all the need for, again, stormwater utility type of improvements that are going to benefit our city, and there's always a need for more money to address that need. Within our city, I think we have a formula for fund balance, and it's somewhere around 25%, or 4 months of budget, I think, is what they. When they look at fund balances, they like to have a certain amount that makes them feel like you're leaving a decent cushion. When I looked at it, I saw that they had, in essence, like a $3 million type of fund balance, and they were. I think Andrew told us that they were aiming towards 80% instead of 100%, which is, even that is still overly generous on the eyes of a fund balance needed or warranted. So I also looked again at what they modified it, they reduced it down, but the rate increases over 5 years were, I think, was 41% on the residential side. And you know, when you look at the dollar amounts, that they're always, again, harmless, but when you look at it at that level. But I deal with a lot of commercial real estate, and I know one of my owners, and he uses almost no water because of his type of business that he has. But he has a significant payment that he pays because of the fact that his 1 acre of land is almost all impermeable. It has a building or parking lot, and therefore it has runoff, and runoff is a no-no, and therefore you get docked for it. And so the commercial are really, being impacted on a fee and a tax that is making just another bill, which then they have to, again, charge back to the tenants, and the tenants then pay a higher rent just because of that type of a formula. There's very generous dollars coming in. And again, the last year that we had, not this year that we're projecting for, but they had $1,200,000 roughly in revenues that come from the existing stormwater utility fees for residential, and 500,000 were the numbers for commercial, and then they had other institutional and other categories that had different amounts projected as revenue from. So I think they have a lot of money to play with, and there's also a lot of projects to do. So it's a balancing act, and I'm on the side of not really feeling that it's warranted. And even though they've made some reduction, I think they can do more. And a fund balance that's as healthy as they have, they can afford to dip into that and use that down to some lower percentage, which will allow them to do projects within their fund balance and still, at least for the next year. They can always revisit it a year from now and make the case a year from now. But today, voting for it, it seems like unnecessarily high rate increase, even though it's for some, it seems residentially not that big a deal. So, but we're back to, sending the wrong message, another little bit of a bill that doesn't need to be, and why not save $1 and put $1 in their pocket versus taking it from them when you could save? So I'm not in favor of it.
Thank you, Mayor. In many cases, I do want to echo Alderman Berg's comments. The stormwater costs are something that I have heard from time to time. Constituents, particularly developers who are looking at some tracts of land or have some ability to essentially absorb those costs within their organization. This comes right out of our own finance committee, so I have to admit I've been a little distracted with a few other items here. Assuming that next year's finance committee has a chance to look at or look at that again, I think a comparative view of what these charges are compared to some of the other counties or some of the other cities in the area would be handy, because again, all I have is some anecdotal complaints, but I can echo that this is one of those areas where people have reached out and wanted to talk to me about. I just haven't been able to give this the time of day. But I do think you have some valid points, Alderman Berg.
Mr. Mayor, a few things I would note. First, unfortunately, we are once again in a situation of catch-up, just as we were with other rates earlier this year, in that nothing years, and the fund was allowed to deteriorate to its current financial condition. And I say deteriorate, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So I'm with you in terms of it's a lot in 5 years. It should have been done before. And I think that Public Works and then Finance after that has reviewed a plan, a second run on the plan that brought it down from initial recommendations to, again, not a number any of us would like to see, but it's a number that we will need. Secondly, regarding the amount needed, water, like sewer, like water, really run on a different basis, which is that they are capital intensive. And the same ratios that we apply to other areas in terms of fund balance just don't work that way. And this is a plan put together based on not here we're going to guess at what we think we need. It's like a real plan based on real projects that are coming forward that are capital intensive. And you tend to go through these situations, and unless you plan properly, you go to a point where you're pulling your funds down to a point where when something goes really wrong, you don't have the capital you need. Because when things go wrong in utilities, it's not a couple of $1,000s here and there. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars at a given point. So the 80% fund balance is no joke. And there's a reason why the recommendation and industry-wide is at 100, and we're gonna go at 80, which is significantly lower. And again, it's because utilities run on a fundamentally different basis. And the last thing I want to highlight about that is we're about to go through a major permit renewal that is likely to bring extensive costs, the like of which we have not seen previously. And that's because the state and federal government keep tightening down the hatchet on what we call point sources. It means a source that it can point to. And municipal utilities are one of the few sources they can point to. Point to just general runoff coming from anywhere. But they can point to us, and they do. And we bear the brunt, way disproportionate, beyond what we could potentially pollute at. We're asked to do way, way more on behalf of everyone else that they can't point to. So there are major costs coming our way as a result of this permit renewal. And we will very much need these funds.
Things like flooding and water in the basements is what we're trying to avoid as well. No fund balance. Mr. Berg?
Yeah, nobody wants to have water in the basement, as an obvious. And clearly, I've been in this town all my life, so I know we've always had issues to deal with, and that's just the nature of the beast. Any good manager has to prioritize the dollars they have to work with. So, you know, you can give them all the money they want, and they'll still find things they need money for. And I don't care what entity you're looking at. That's the nature of how things are. So I don't buy into that entirely. I know the points you're making are valid, but to a point. And I believe in prioritizing dollars you have to work with. But I do know that one thing almost everybody in this town complains about is their water bill. And they want to know why. But you know what? The reality is most people don't. They think, well, God, they're charging me a lot for that water. But I said, well, you got to look at the fire protection, and you got to look at the stormwater utility fee, and you got to look at the water and the sewer, and then you got all these other little components that add up to the bill. And that's really the reality for a lot of the why of people complaining. They don't have the handle on where it's coming from. They just think that the water itself is the source of the problem, and it is to a degree. But it's everything else attached to that water bill, and that was years ago when we took it off. It used to be, when I first got on the council, part of the tax levy. And we were going to change it, and we did it for the right reason. I was in favor of it back then. I think Alderperson Smith at the time was one of the authors of making that happen, and it was a good thing that we did it for that reason. But you still go back to the fact that that bill is because of a lot of entities that are tapping into it and using it, and they're attaching to it, and it's giving the water an unrealistic cause of that bill when it's things I just pointed out here. And stormwater utility on a lot of properties is a very significant part of that water bill. And I think some of that is an exaggeration, and they've made the case so that they can, the formula is going to give significant dollars based on whatever property it is, based on the circumstances of that property. And it generates huge dollars. And a lot of it is commercial people, and businesses that are trying to make a dollar fair and square. Parking lots, and even churches and entities that have parking lots pay that utility under this formula. It's not just for profit making, and for everybody contributes to that kind of a bill, including nonprofits. And if you have parking lots, you are a target for that to be a decent number. So I think if I were in charge, I would give them less than they want, and we are, but I would do it even further, and either we modify it further down or we vote it down.
Go on, Mr. Blanke.
Normally, I would agree with an assessment like that. I want to address the last thing you pointed out first, that there are several entities, churches, schools, whatnot, that are generally nonprofit that don't contribute to the taxes through their tax-exempt properties.
Right.
Which is why this has been moved to the water bill, because when you have a parking lot the size of some of these, it's contributing a far greater amount to the stormwater runoff than, say, your average residential home. So you're asking a normal citizen, in a residential home to subsidize a nonprofit that has a large amount of impervious surface.
That's why I voted for it.
So that's one of the reasons that was done. But if you go back in the Public Works agenda from October 28th, we're not talking about hypothetical expenses here. Quoting from the study, it says the city completed an extensive citywide flood control study in 2024, and the capital expenditures recommended within that analysis require increased cash flow. These are problems, flooding problems within the city we know about. We've identified them. So to not have the capital on hand to address a problem that's been identified, especially something flooding, it's there's health concerns, there's all kinds of concerns with flooding, but it's not just water coming into someone's basement. But when you've identified the problem and then you aren't going to address it, I think that it's a bad practice to get in the habit of doing.
Okay, I think we're ready, Megan.
Arnett. Wetzel. Moldenauer.
Aye.
Davis. Aye. Lampy. Berg.
No.
Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. All right, last resolutions. Exhibit 9800, a resolution to enter into the 2026-2027 service agreement between the City of Watertown, Wisconsin, and the Watertown Humane Society, sponsored by myself and the Finance Committee.
I'll move for its adoption.
Okay.
I'll second.
Motion by Berg, second by Davis. Look this way first. Okay, Mr. Lampy?
I'll just note that this basically represents a 3% increase in our allocation to the Humane Society, followed by a contractual 0% increase, if I'm reading that right, in 2027. So we are just underfunding probably to the level of inflation. So they're going to experience a small reduction of our contribution as relates to inflation, even though we're going up by 3% absolutely this year, but then we're also holding it level the following year, which essentially will have the effect of reducing us. But this is a 2-year contract, which pertains to the 1-year figure you see in the budget.
Mr. Berg?
I think Jonathan's made a good point, and that is and the net effect of this agreement is 1.5% a year times 2 is 3. So, and they have a larger facility because of the enlarged area that they have. Just like the library's got a larger area that they take care of because of their expansion, the Humane Society went ahead and they, through fundraising, they've got the ability, I don't think obviously they raised enough to pay the bill, but they raised enough to build the building with a debt that's owed. And they do have a larger facility than they had before. And so they are underfunded. And if I could, I would be on the side of somehow giving them a larger dollar amount. But I've looked at this topic, and it's just not something that right now we can deal with. So I hope they get fundraising. I hope they have other sources of revenue that make the difference so that they can continue to do the job, because I personally have seen the benefit of the Humane Society in ways that make me an advocate for it. And I think we should be thankful we have an improved, larger Humane Society for all the people that are pet lovers and owners in town.
Okay.
Berg.
Aye.
Bartz.
Aye.
Blanky.
Aye.
Smith. Arnett. Wetzel. Moldenhauer.
Aye.
Davis. Lampy. Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to comments, I'll add our meetings in December are scheduled for December 2nd and the 16th. I believe we're going to have a special one December 9th for the budget. After the 15 days, it's published in the paper. So keep in mind, we'll have 3 meetings in a row in December. I'll give you guys off the 23rd and the 30th, though, okay? All right.
Did we actually vote on the budget at some point?
We will we'll have to, yeah,
Okay.
that night, yes.
Are they all 7 o'clock?
I think we can plan on that, yeah. Normal time on December 9th as well, yes. Okay. Last comments and suggestions from citizens present. Anybody wishing to address the council have up to 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. Greg, you want to? You sure? Okay. Okay. Seeing none, I'll then look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay, I'll take that as a motion by Mollenhauer and a second by Wetzel. How's that? Okay. Before we do, just want to say happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you, Myron. Myron, thanks for coming in, okay?
You bet.
I'll bring you more scones soon, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Recording stopped.
Chocolate chip, that's his favorite.
That's the way to go. You bet.
And more coffee, okay, Myron?